Hi. So this is that longer video that I promised was going to come out of the last two, right? So I had a 1 minute short where I was like, hey, here's some big basic overview items of like why this post isn't true. And then I had a 15-second short where I was like, hey, this is the post that's just not true. And what I wanted to do now is take a little bit of time to explain in actual real detail why these things are just absolutely not true. All right, so the first thing is it said that foxes aren't legal to trap or kill. So I made a post on Facebook, and later, if this video has any kind of a following whatsoever, or if it's requested, I'll post the links on all the states that I have trapped in and am licensed to trap in, including the state that I am licensed as a wildlife control officer in. Those are my chickens. That literally tell you you can trap foxes. So some of the things that I really want to point out is what this is. This is a cage trap. So like I said, the state I live in is incredibly difficult to get any kind of, it's very anti-trapping, right? You're not allowed to use foothold traps on land except for coyotes. They have to be very specific. They have to be offset, rubber jawed. They can't close with more than a certain PSI of pressure, blah, 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 blah. And what I really want to impress upon everybody is that that is most rubber jaw traps on the market fit this bill. Like, you read it and you're like, wow, that's really specific. Like, that's a pretty stringent requirement. Stetson, come here. Sit down. Good boy. But it's just, most traps fit that bill because it's just, it doesn't follow best practices for ethics or for fur handling to have anything that doesn't fit that bill. Now, as far as the closing requirements and all of these things, right? And the whole point is, like, if you have an inadvertent catch, you don't want to hurt the inadvertent animal. Sure, right? I got it. But think about it from like a trapper's perspective is, you know, if you're tearing up furs, you are costing yourself money. And trapping is already kind of a hobby that hemorrhages money 90% of the time. And the only way to really fund it is with the fur sales. Also, from like an environmental standpoint, fur trapping is phenomenal. And by that, what I mean is to use furs in lieu of plastics, the way things used to be. Furs are 100% renewable, 100% biodegradable, and they can be replenished every year by just following some really simple best practices. We'll go into that later this year if people actually want to see it. And the thing about it is they don't take up space in landfills after they're done with, right? Because they degrade, and they degrade, I don't want to say rapidly, but quickly enough that, you know, they're not in a landfill for 10,000 years like a plastic or a synthetic would be. So there's a huge environmental plus to using these furs. Additionally, like, they support real people because there's just not a company that's out there doing trapping. It's like individual people. So when you buy these things, like, you're actually supporting a real human, not a massive corporation. So that's just kind of one part of it. And but as far as like circling back to saying it's illegal, that's just not true. So Massachusetts completely outlawed trapping. At least that's what I've been told. I don't know. I've never been there. I know California banned trapping as well. Like, gone. You can't do it recreationally. What I do know is both of those states offer a wildlife officer control program, like a NUCO program. And so now, instead of being able to call like your local trappers association, which is all about partaking in renewable trapping because they want there to be animals on the landscape to trap, and they're paying for conservation efforts, and they're paying to make sure that these animals are healthy, and they're following best practices, and they're working directly with state wildlife biologists. Now it's like a guy who only wants to make money. And the quicker he kills everything that could potentially be a problem for you, the quicker he can go on to the next job and make more money. Additionally, these people are very expensive. So like I said, I got licensed to do it. I do it at cost. So basically for nothing. I ask for fuel in my truck, and I ask for baits or lures. And then if something happens and a trap gets broken or is otherwise unserviceable, I ask that the landowner pay to replace those. I'm the cheapest person I've found in order to actually do it. And I only do it to try and help people out. But even then, there's a whole nother group of people that do this 100% for free. Like, you call them and you say, hi, insert State Trappers Association. My name is blah. I live at blah, and I have a problem with blah animal. And if it's around the trapping season, they will send somebody out to eliminate that animal for you. And then they just ask for more permissions to trap in the future. It's a really, really awesome thing that they have going on. And again, they don't even want to kill all the animals, because that means that there's less of them, right? They want to use best practices, and they want to 100% trap with renewable means. So that's kind of one aspect of it. The other aspect of it was saying that foxes don't mess with domestic animals, which is absolutely not true. I can tell you from a lot of experience, foxes, like the term fox in the hen house, like that came from somewhere. Like that came from a real place. And that place that it came from was, they've gone in there and they've killed many hens. You know, at least 2. Like I've heard stories, if you follow like any farming page or any chicken raising page, you'll see that like there are cases of a fox going in and in a couple of days killing 11 or 12 chickens. They're not what you're saying in this, right? Like additionally, like if you have rabbits, foxes are incredibly harmful to rabbits. They'll decimate a population. Same way with turkey, right? Like we literally just got turkeys back from the brink of being gone. Now everyone's hooting and hollering, jumping up and down and screaming, and they're saying that like we shouldn't be trapping. And if you look, the states where they're getting rid of trapping, recreational trapping, have an influx of wildlife problems, because that's the most effective means to manage it. And also to the people that are like, oh, but coyote and wolf trapping, like shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. If you actually do your research, like trapping is not the best. It's not effective enough. Stetson, come. It is not an effective enough method alone, right? Like it can be used and it works well for a property. But when you're looking at things on a grand scheme, like so Idaho, for example, has allowed wolf trapping. And there's been like a guy that's tagged out every year, right? Like a singular person. And they're allowed like 30, which is a pretty reasonable number. It's not, you know, anything excessive. It's not like one guy's going out there killing 200 or 300 of them. The problem is like it's so difficult to do it. It's so difficult to catch them in a trap. Like trappers are some of the best woodsmen in the trade. They just absolutely are a master of the craft. And it's so specialized that they're not even putting a dent in the wolf population. It continues to grow every year, and the whole point of this was to maintain it. And the reason is you've got to kill an obscene amount of animals in order to maintain a canine population at its level, especially when you're looking at like wolves or coyotes. And that's one of the reasons why like trapping's just not going to be effective. And then when people are like, yeah, we over-trapped them, we got rid of them, that's why they were gone. I mean, that's kind of true, but it was really from poisoning, right? Like they would take animals on the brink of death or shoot animals and have them almost dead, and they would literally pump strychnine through their body. And that is how they were killing these animals, because they'd come and they'd eat it and then it was poisoned. That's not legal anymore. The United States said, hey, we're not doing that, right? Like it doesn't take a whole lot of skill to be able to do it, and it's absolutely atrocious on the wildlife population. 100% not going to do it. And I think if you look at like the spread of the coyote population, now the spread of the wolf population after it's been reintroduced, and even looking at states like California, that they've gotten rid of bobcat trapping, and they've gotten rid of like mountain lion hunting, and now they have more problem animals than before. It's just a testament to like what these people do and how good that they are for the environment. And that's just like what they do on the surface. when you actually start to dig and you look at all the money that they spend, trappers actually were like pre-Pittman Robertson Act. So like they wanted this for a very long time, like in order to have like conservation funds for trapping, because it's a livelihood, and it's a very expensive one at that. So you have to go through and look at the whole picture of like, hey, why would somebody want all of these animals gone? And the answer is, most of the time, it's people who don't actually have respect for the animals that want them all gone, and they don't have the skill set necessary in order to make it happen. So sure, like that's part 2 of it. And then part 3 of it is I see a ton of people that are like, why don't we just relocate them? Right? If you catch them, why don't you just relocate them? And it's not legal in a lot of states, right? Like where I currently am, you can't relocate any rabies vector species more than 1 mile. And foxes here are a rabies vector species, so you're not legally allowed to relocate them more than 1 mile. And if you do relocate them less than 1 mile, it's within their natural range anyway, and they're just gonna make it back. They're just gonna become a problem animal again, and you've just wasted the money. A lot of the problems too is that people will tell you that they're gonna relocate them and let them go, and then into their twisted minds, they're like, oh, I'm gonna relocate them to the back of my truck and kill them. And like, that's not the right answer, right? Like that's a morally wrong answer, and it's a morally wrong thing to do, but people do it all the time. Again, these are not trappers. These are not recreational trappers. These are your wildlife control guys that are going to charge you a premium for relocating, and a lot of times they kill them. Now, that's not all of them, and I don't want my words to be misconstrued. There are a ton of good ones, but the bad ones are real bad. And somebody's going to take this and they're going to make a clip and they're going to yada 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 blah blah blah, and it's just not the case, right? Like and so I ask that like you do your own research and you really like delve deep into it, especially looking at like, there was a study that was done not long ago. I don't remember who did it. I just wrote a paper on it about like the increase in beaver population in northern Alaska is contributing to accelerated rates of permafrost defrosting, right? And it's because like there's no money in it, because there's so many people that are against it, that the fur market is just dwindling away, and so these animals are like left to their own devices, and they're not really in check for anything, because there's no point, like there's no reason to go to the rural areas anymore, like in the remote areas, to trap these animals, because there's no money in it. Then a lot of people are gonna be like, well, that's horrible, like people should be more motivated. And it's like, okay, well, you can go, right? Like you can take a trapping course, you can get a license, and you can go and do it. But the people who have the skill set to actually do it and be successful at it are they do it for money, and there's just not enough money to make it worth all the travel, the time away from home, and the massive expense of moving furs back and forth like that. So it's something that you have to keep in mind when you're saying this. And lastly is it just really bothers me at how little people actually fact check things before they post what is considered to be gospel, right? And it's absolutely astounding, and there's just not really any kind of a way around it, and it's really kind of embarrassing for like the people who are law-abiding, the people who try and do things correctly and follow best practice. And there's a lot of guys out there that are really trying to do good and really trying to be helpful, and they just do it because they enjoy it, and they donate the furs, or they sell the furs, they eat the meat. I mean, there's a whole following for like meat trapping, and it's kind of ridiculous when you see these posts that it's like, well, I guess this person's an absolute monster for what? So what I want to summarize with in conclusion is, 1, it is not illegal to trap foxes or to shoot foxes, as long as it's done in season or by somebody licensed as a wildlife control officer. 2, the repercussions of your actions are a lot more than you think. And one of the things I'd like to say is, when a lot of these states ban trapping altogether, or they ban a certain type of hunting altogether, they do that in isolation from actual wildlife biologists. And the wildlife biologists kind of stand there and they're like, what's going on? Like, why are we not being listened to? And if you don't believe me on that, listen to like the Meat Eater podcast with Steve Ranella. Has a ton of really, really good information, and they specifically do interviews with wildlife biologists regularly for some of these states. And lastly is really evaluate what we're doing to the environment and what is the least impactful way to exist, right? Like, is having a goose down and coyote fur coat really worse for the environment than creating however many hundreds of yards of plastic it takes to make that coat, and do it with synthetic fibers, and then look at the breakdown time frame, and then look at especially if the animals are being harvested using best practice or best methods, because it's really quite painless. I said it in one of my other videos. I accidentally catch myself at least once a week. It's realistically probably closer to 3 or 4 times a week in a trap during trapping season at footholds, of course. And what I'm gonna say is, like, it stings, but it doesn't break skin, it doesn't break bones. It's not what they're designed to do. Like, all of the traps that are set that an animal could inadvertently come in now, right? There used to be some really monstrous traps, but it was costing people a lot of money, right? Because animals were getting their fur tore up, and a lot of times, like, the paws, especially on predatory animals, are very, 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 very valuable. Like cats, bears, anything of that nature, the paws are very valuable. And a lot of these people want to keep those paws on the animals, especially on the furs. So really look, and please do your research, right? And if I'm wrong, please comment, let me know I'm wrong. I have no problems being wrong. This is just what I found based off of my research. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for hanging in there with me, and I hope that you learned something today.